Hi, Deacon Ed McCormick here at St. John the Baptist Catholic Community, and this is part 2 of my series on the Passion according to Mark's Gospel that we will be hearing this Palm Sunday. And in this part of our series, I'm beginning to talk about the Passion itself. The setting is the city of Jerusalem and the surrounding area, including the village of Bethany. It's Passover. It's the Jewish feast of Passover. That's a springtime festival, and Jews from all around the Holy Land, all around Israel, would have been coming to Jerusalem to celebrate this feast with their family and friends. So Jesus and his disciples come from Galilee in the north and travel approximately 90 miles south to Jerusalem. And it seems that they are staying in Bethany, in the village of Bethany. So the city of Jerusalem is about 2,600 feet above sea level, and the eastern part of the city has a valley known as the Kidron Valley, and then there's the Mount of Olives, and then on the other side of the Mount of Olives is the village of Bethany. It's about 2 miles from the city of Jerusalem, and that's where Jesus and his disciples seem to be staying. So here's the sequence of events that I want to focus on today. The Passion of Mark begins in Jerusalem, probably up in the Temple Mount, with the scribes and the priests who run the temple area plotting to arrest and kill Jesus. That's how the whole thing starts. Then the next scene is Jesus and his disciples are in Bethany, staying in the home of a cured leper by the name of Simon. And as they're staying there, a woman comes into the house and breaks a beautiful, expensive jar of ointment, and pours it over Jesus. The next scene is Judas, and he's back in Jerusalem in the temple area, talking to the high priest and the other priests and scribes to plot how he can help them capture Jesus. Because remember, there are thousands and thousands of people gathered in the city of Jerusalem. It's not that they're going to know who he is or where he is, but Judas can help him. And then the scene shifts back to Bethany, where the disciples ask Jesus, where do you want to celebrate the Passover? He sends them back into the city of Jerusalem. It seems that he has prearranged a room with someone he knows, and the disciples go to the room. They're shown by the owner where the room is. Undoubtedly, they go into the city and buy all the foodstuffs that would have been necessary for the Passover, the lamb and the matzah bread, the wine, and all of that. And that evening, Jesus arrives with the disciples, with the 12. And right before Mark recounts the Last Supper, Jesus warns them that one of them is going to betray him. And then Mark recounts his version of the Last Supper. And then at the end of the Last Supper, the scene ends with Jesus warning the disciples that they're all going to betray him. They're all going to flee. Peter says, no, I won't. And Jesus says, yes, you will. After the cock crows twice, you will deny me. So that's the setting, and those are the series of events. I just want to make one or two comments for your own reflection. Here's the first one. You notice how the events move back and forth from the scribes and the priests plotting to capture and kill Jesus. And then all of a sudden we're in Bethany, and this woman anoints Jesus and praises her for anointing him. And then we're back to Judas in the temple plotting against Jesus and offering to help them capture Jesus. And Mark likes this literary device. It's like a sandwich technique where you've got one piece of bread, the plotting of the scribes and Pharisees. In the middle is this beautiful event of this woman anointing Jesus, and then this horrible event of one of the 12 betraying Jesus. And Mark is deliberately moving from one horrible scene to a beautiful scene to another horrible scene. And you notice how the Last Supper is framed that way. It begins with the Jesus warning them that one of them is going to betray him. Then they're at the Last Supper with the bread and wine. And then we have Jesus warning that the disciples will flee, Peter will betray him. And there's this whole movement between the forces, the political and social forces, but really the forces of evil, and the beautiful events that happen with Jesus. And that we move back and forth between these events. At the center of this scene, of course, is the Last Supper. But I want you to notice, as we move back and forth between the plot, the betrayal, the warning about Judas, the warning to Peter, you're getting this sense that this growing darkness, the growing forces of evil are starting to overtake Jesus. This almost dark, evil cloud. And these forces include political forces, religious leadership. The scribes and the priests are the religious leadership of Jerusalem. They run the temple. It involves this close friend of Jesus. It involves Jesus' own disciples who will eventually flee, and one of his best friends, his handpicked leader, Peter, betraying him. And so all these political and social and personal forces are being overtaken by the forces of evil. In the middle of this, you have the Last Supper. Now, as Catholics, we traditionally think of this as the institution of the Eucharist. And that's true. Jesus takes some of the matzah bread and says, "This is my body." And then he takes one of the cups, one of the many cups used at Passover, and says, "This is my blood for the new covenant." But what's really going on here, beyond the institution of the Eucharist, that is fitting with this narrative, is that Jesus is identifying his coming death on the cross with these symbols from Passover. So you notice what's going on. On the one hand, Jesus and his contemporaries are Jews. And so they're remembering the Passover event from the Exodus, where God freed these enslaved Egyptians from slavery. So they're looking back and remembering that event. At the same time, Jesus is looking ahead to the cross and later on to his disciples after his death. All the while, he is identifying his own coming death with the Exodus, with the bread and the wine associated with the Exodus. Why? Because in some ways, this is the culminating meal of many meals he has had. It's the culmination of his ministry. And he's identifying the culmination of his ministry and the cross with the Exodus event. Because Jesus is telling us what he thinks it means. He is telling us that it is the event of liberation. It is the event in which God will act. Just as God acted at the Exodus to free the Israelites from slavery, his death will be the event through which God will act to free all of us from the forces of evil that are converging on Jesus, the very forces that cause us to crucify other people. And so for Jesus, he is telling us this is the event of your liberation. My death will be that event. I'll see you in the next video.